right, the next Greek philosopher that we want to mention is Epicurus. Now, Epicurus's thought, or thought sort of derived from Epicurus's thought, is going to really going to represent sort of more of a foil to the development of Christian theological ethics. And I think you'll be able to see when we look at this that Epicurean thought remains really influential today, for us today, even if people thinking it don't realize that their thought is sort of deriving from Epicurus. So one of the key elements of Epicurean thought is the idea that matter is all there is. Now remember, right, both Plato and Aristotle are trying to wrestle with what matter kind of points to. What does a particular thing point to? And they both do that in kind of different ways, but they're both going to suggest that matter is not all there is. There is a sort of transcendent aspect to the universe. But Epicurus is going to say, no, there isn't. Matter is all there is. And Epicurus obviously didn't have the modern scientific knowledge that we do, but he postulated that matter is broken down into ultimately indivisible units, and that's the idea of atomic materialism. Obviously, materialism is, I think, one of the important sort of philosophical approaches, whether explicit or assumed, today that we're kind of grappling with when we're trying to do Christian theological ethics, because Christian theology, I would suggest, has to reject materialism, ultimately, at least because we assert that God exists and God is not matter. The other piece of Epicureanism is the idea that the highest good is pleasure. Now, when you hear this, I think we definitely can see a resonance with sort of the assumed ethic of a lot of our culture. Although I would say that for Epicurus, that a notion of pleasure is not exactly the same notion that we would think of, or that our culture might think of. So our culture will think of pleasure as an intense experience, right? So let's say, a sexual experience, right? A very intense experience is what our culture tends to mean by pleasure. But for Epicurus, it's really a calm serenity. It's a pleasure that's more of a meditative kind of pleasure, you could say. So Christian thought is going to kind of push back certainly against this idea about atomic materialism, but some notions of this calmness and this serenity are going to find their ways into certain forms of Christian theological ethics. Although Christian theological ethics wouldn't necessarily call that the highest good, at least not sort of as an initial good.